get thrown. His mind is so strong. You can see it in the way he handles, like, cuts or anything that happens to him, man. He does not lose focus, man. People call him a cyborg for that reason. He just never loses focus. He doesn't get emotional. He just takes motherfuckers apart and he finds a way to win every time.
Right now, mixed martial arts has reached a level that is acceptable for almost the entire world of sports. Quite some time has passed since the industry has established major bounds that allow it to control the process and adhere to the rules of safety. It includes weight categories, legal techniques, and qualified staff in action. But today we would like to talk about the cases when different promotions neglected one of the criterion for the sake of a spectacle and put together fighters whose size did not quite match in terms of sports integrity, to say the least. Please don't forget about the likes, comments with 4 words, and subscribe to the channel. Here we go. Eric Ash, Genki Sudo, K1 Premium. The first clash we are going to talk about today happened on December the 31st of 2003. At the K1 Premium Dynamite tournament, the crowd witnessed a rather odd but nonetheless a very exciting rivalry. The Japanese MMA fighter Genki Sudo shared the ring with an imposing Eric Ash. At that time, enormous Butterbean was some kind of TV and internet star, but he also had a little experience in amateur sport. As soon as the fight started, everybody held their breath. At first, nobody could figure out how the Japanese fighter could possibly do something to such an opponent. Genki thought a little bit and chose the most logical tactic. For almost the whole round, he played catch-up with a clumsy Eric. He simply circled around him for a couple of minutes, occasionally cutting the distance and landing some strikes. The American Butterbean did his best to try to catch a dodgy Japanese and connected with at least one significant shot. That kind of scurry lasted for 4 minutes, until Genki Sudo suddenly shot for his opponent's legs and scored a takedown. He spent the last 60 seconds for some kind of control and ground and pound attempt. And at that very last moment, he grabbed Eric's leg and tried to execute a submission. In the next round, the Japanese became a lot looser. Sure, he continued to circle around the American for a while. However, he began to engage a lot more, often in an aggressive manner. When he once again bounced from the ropes and cannoned into Eric with a leg, the latter managed to catch and take him to the ground. It seemed like the outcome was predetermined. It wasn't. The slick Japanese managed to crawl out from his opponent, grab his legs and ultimately execute the submission, earning a spectacular win. Bob Sapp, DVa Conkley, super fight. It's always interesting to watch a fight between rivals of unequal size, especially if it features familiar faces. A huge American beast, Bob Sapp, who had vivid performances at K1 and a rather good start in MMA, began to decline over time. He couldn't handle the opposition and had to tour around the world, earning wins here and there with variable success. The beast had a very special offer in Hungary, where he was supposed to clash with a local legend, DVa Conkley. That fighter had a phenomenal resume. 389 wins in kickboxing and Thai boxing with only 1 loss. DVa started competing in the end of the 80s. He had an enormous experience, so the size difference did not bother him. The fight started in the beast's common manner. He immediately rushed at his significantly smaller opponent and tried to end the fight as quickly as possible. As for DVa, he properly clinched and slowed down the onslaught of the American giant. Sapp lost his opponent in sight, got caught with a right high kick and went down. Soon he managed to get up, but a 47-year-old veteran sent the beast down again with a time trip. After that, Sapp got really angry. He threw DVa over the ropes and tried to finish him, dismissing the referee who tried to hold the outraged American. Tension was gradually increasing, the crowd was going crazy. While DVa already knew what he was going to do, the beast shouldn't be allowed to get in the range, as with such a difference in mass, he was able to knock him out with 1 punch. That's why the experienced Muay Thai fighter clinched again, picked the moment and connected with a decisive left elbow. Bob Sapp went down again and couldn't get up this time. Sure, people can have long speculations about such freak fights featuring the beast, Nobody denies the acting that sometimes can catch one's eye, but the fact remains, the fighter from Hungary got the job done and did it in a brutal fashion. Daiju Takasi, Emmanuel Yarboro, Pride 3. Now let's dive into the era of the legendary and ruthless Pride. In June of 1998, when the organization only had its third tournament, there was a fight that is still present in compilations dedicated to the topic of rivalries with fighters who were unequal in weight. A yet unknown young debutant from Japan, Daiju Takase, went up against the worldwide famous sumo artist Emmanuel Yarboro. Even nowadays, the American fighter is still considered as one of the heaviest athletes in the world's sport, as his weight was around 400 kilograms. Just think about this number. When fighters entered the ring, it became evident that Yarboro is truly huge. Takase also figured that out. At first, he actively moved to the sides and rarely tried to converge. When Emmanuel realized the rules of the game, he tried to catch his opponent in a moment when he made another turn and got as close as possible. After one powerful strike, the Japanese changed his tactic. He began to move around the ring more often, sometimes switching to running, which forced Yarboro to do the same thing. A huge sumo artist tried to catch his agile vis-a-vis for the whole first round, but ultimately couldn't do it. In the second round, Yarboro got really annoyed. He desperately tried to grab slick Takase numerous times, but he managed to escape from dangerous situations every single time. Soon, the Japanese pretended for a crazy act to shoot for a single leg. However, his takedown attempt resembled a hug with a tree. Yarboro laid on his opponent with his whole body, but Daiju Takase showed incredible agility and once again broke out of a dangerous situation. After that, he connected with a couple of precise shots that led to his expected victory. Unfortunately for the American, the mass did not help him in that fight. He simply couldn't use it properly. Paul Valance, Igor Vovchanchin, IFC 1 Combat in Kiev. Igor Vovchanchin is one of the most vicious old-school fighters. One of his nicknames was Giant Slayer, and for a reason. Having a small height for a heavyweight, 174 centimeters, the legendary Ukrainian mostly scored wins against fighters that were significantly superior in terms of size. One of such fighters was an enormous American called Paul Valance. On March the 30th of 1996, he faced Igor Vovchanchin at one of the local tournaments in Kiev. It was a true old-school MMA with almost no rules in play. On top of that, Valance was recognized as one of the biggest fighters in the history of mixed martial arts. His height was 203 centimeters and weight of 140 kilograms. Before his arrival in Ukraine, Paul performed at a still developing organization called UFC. He had 7 fights within those walls, 4 of which he won in a decisive manner. He did not shy away from using his main advantage and often won thanks to his natural physical talent. In comparison to his opponent, Vovchanchin weighed only 90 kilos. That's why his chances for a dominant win were smaller than usual. The American fighter went forward from the get-go. He literally rushed at his opponent, but Vovchanchin was not scared of his size. He immediately acted in advance and countered Valance with a lightning-fast combination. The American withstood the first strikes with no issues. He continued to tank the Ukrainian and tried to tie him in the clinch. If he succeeded, he could have capitalized on his advantage in size. Vovchanchin also knew that, so he desperately barraged his huge opponent with the most crushing strikes from his arsenal. The fight went that way for a couple of minutes. Paul Valance did not even try to come up with something else. He persistently continued to walk him down without any attacks, only to cut the distance and utilize his wrestling skills. While Igor Vovchanchin's tactic, on the contrary, worked perfectly. He methodically dismantled the American fighter at any chance he got. Soon, it had an effect. During another single attack, the Ukrainian managed to stun his opponent. Then a couple more crushing shots did their job and Igor Vovchanchin earned another vivid win. Fedor Emilianenenko, Hongman Choi, Yaronoka, New Year's Eve. And of course we couldn't avoid mentioning Fedor Emelianenko's fight in a rubric when a small fighter beats the bigger one. The clash of the last emperor with the South Korea representative, Hongman Choi, is already considered a classic mixed martial arts. Athletes shared the ring on December the 31st of 2007. Even though Hongman Choi had only one professional MMA fight, he already had 16 kickboxing fights, 12 of which he won, so underestimating the Korean would be a mistake. But as we know, the legendary Fedor Emelianenko fought everybody and never picked his opponents, and almost every rival of this great athlete surpassed him in size. Frankly speaking, at first it wasn't clear how Fedor was going to beat such an opponent. He looked so huge. Fedor decided to take Choi down, however it wasn't very successful, and the Korean got to a dominant position. The initiative was entirely coming from Emelianenko, and soon the work on the ground gradually led to a signature submission attempt. Armbar. At first, Choi managed to escape and land some significant shots on Emelianenko. The fight returned to action in the stand-up. Emelianenko tries to work more actively. He catches his opponent with a good left hand, and then tries to take him down again. The situation repeats itself. The Korean's size doesn't let the Russian properly perform a takedown, and he drops Choi on himself again. The Korean immediately turns up and lands a couple of crushing blows on Emelianenko. Fedor tries to dodge and eventually goes for another armbar attempt. This time everything happens impeccably. Hongman Choi taps and Fedor Emelianenko earns another vivid win in front of the Japanese crowd. Extra spot: Royce Gracie, Akito Taro, K1 Dynamite. On October the 31st of 2004, another K1 tournament featured a 200kg athlete nicked Great Champion, Akito, and the initiator of such a discipline as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Royce Gracie. At that moment, the Brazilian was already quite famous in the fighting circles. He performed at many popular tournaments, including the first events of the world's best league. And at every single one of these places, he promoted that art without holding any statements back. The thing is that the Gracie clan has been opening jiu-jitsu schools in the USA since the 70s, and the success of their followers on TV gave a perception of significance and efficiency of this discipline like nothing else. As soon as the fight started, fighters slowly moved to the center. Akito managed to be on top of his opponent before the viewers knew it. It seemed like such a heavy fighter doesn't need anything else to win. Half the work is already done, and now it was a case for small, keep Royce Gracie down there for as long as possible. But no! The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master, even despite a 200kg body on top of him, continued to work like nothing was happening. Soon, progressively moving, he managed to crawl from under his opponent. At that time, he tries to take his back, but Akito has time to get up faster than Royce Gracie. Then the same situation happened. Royce falls on his back and his opponent gets on top of him. But this time, everything goes according to plan. The Brazilian distracts Akito with a couple of strikes, who tries to nestle to his opponent. At that time, the father of Jiu-Jitsu braces Akito's left arm with his legs. After a while, he gets it in complete control and executes a sensational armbar. The crowd is delighted. The commentators scream out of their minds. Akito taps in surrender, and the legendary Royce Gracie scores another big win in a professional career. And that's it for today, friends. As you can see, the size can determine the outcome of the fight. Either way, even tall and heavy athletes can hardly do anything against sharpened skills and high-class mastery. Leave your opinion in the comments below. Which of the aforementioned fights you like the most? Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, let's get 5,000 likes on this video and part 2 will not take long. See you soon.